I'm probably going to keep these our thoughts tonight, my thoughts tonight, philosophy videos weekly. I'm not really sure, but here's another cool idea that I've been having. So we start by Schopenhauer's will. So the Schopenhauer's will, long story short, is the desire that is underneath everything. It is in the nature of things to desire. It's this unconscious desire. Desire is not even a real term here. It's this sort of it's like this conflictual thing within everything, within every sort of phenomena, because obviously Schopenhauer starting from a Kantian perspective, right? So we see things as phenomena, and we don't know what it is behind it, really. What is the noumena? And Schopenhauer's answer was that the noumena was the will, this desire, this it is the fourth class, really. It is the principal sufficient reason, or sorry, the fourfold root. It is the primary reason for anything really being anything at all, is that there is an underlying will. Just as we can, and this goes for, us as ourselves. That's really where he derives this from, really. We look at ourselves, our body, as phenomena, and within us we find, through like introspection, we find this unconscious desire, this will. So the world as will and representation, as magnum opus says. But this is the interesting part of how we can interpret this, in perhaps in a Aristotelian way, maybe a Kripkean, David Lewis. It depends. So the thing is, what is a phenomena? We can view phenomena as a substance, right? Or at least these are objects or substances as perceived through as phenomena. So we can certainly deny substances, maybe, but like substances are kind of needed to kind of keep a coherent ontology. So we keep them, but we can have a caveat of being, okay, these are phenomena. That's it's like substance with an asterisk. But then, okay, so what is the will? What is this noumena? What is this noumenonic, noumenal will, right? We can say, is it a substance? Maybe not really, because if you were to ask, let's say, like a traditional transcendental idealist, what is a noumena a substance? The answer is, I don't know. You don't really know. You can't really say that. Is the will answer provide say something that it is a substance? Like, maybe in a very broader sense. Is it more like a property? Does everything have a will? I mean, it's implied that the will is a single will. So you could say, okay, is it like a pure Platonic form of will? No, it's more than that. It could certainly kind of be like a property, but I think the more interesting route is to say that it is a process. Because really a will, the will is really manifested as an action. It's actually more than just that, but it seems to be, it's interesting. It's really manifested through its results in existing in real and literal perpetuation through space-time, or really just time. And so really the phenomenal noumenal distinction is not just phenomenal and noumenal, it's substance and process. It's that all things are substances, or in a little broader sense, and underneath they're all actually this process. And then we can say, okay, and when we're already talking about processes, when we're talking about the will is a thing through its action, and really its manifestation, we're already starting to go into territories of dispositional powers. Then we start saying that every substance has the disposition to fail. That the fail, as in like the will, that the consequences of willing is suffering. It is every substance, everything has the disposition to suffer, right? Because of the underlying noumenal fact that is the process of will. And this gets and then we can start having this in a really interesting route. We can have a sort of deranged statement saying, in all possible worlds there is suffering, or in all possible worlds where there are substances, or I guess you could say something, or in all possible worlds there is the will. You get what I'm trying to say here, is that if we're not going to abandon substances, and we say substances are things in all possible worlds, at least within the realm of like a sort of metaphysical, within the bounds of metaphysics, we can go beyond maybe to like logic and blah blah blah. But at least traditionally speaking, we would kind of have to accept substances as a real thing and any possibility to a certain extent. And then we start saying, well, if there are substances, then there's the will, which means there is suffering because of the dispositions, which is crazy because it really, and if we go on a little tangent here, and if we say, you know, there's a famous statement, Leibniz, we live in the best of all possible worlds. Schopenhauer, famous, we live in the worst possible worlds, basically. It's beyond that. It's not just we live in the worst of all possible worlds. It's that in all possible worlds, there is the worst possible world, in a sense, in Schopenhauer's metaphysics of the implications of the will. So you can't escape the will at all, and that's really the detriment of Schopenhauer's stuff, is that if you're a thing, you're already done. Like, that's the crazy part. Now, I guess to go back to the previous video a little bit with the ideas of presentism, you can already, if you were to approach it through that, then you can think, okay, the will, does it really have a disposition? We're only really admitting the present. We can maybe say something that has, we can maybe admit that something has a noumenal aspect of the will, but do people really have the disposition to do things because only the present exists? And at that point, you're not really admitting the will as a process. You're kind of admitting it more as a substance or a property. But certainly the will is really only understood in the aspect of it manifesting certain things. Now, you can argue, if you break the distinction between the phenomenal and noumenal, between the disposition and the manifestation, between how the will is as a process and the actual representation of it. If we try to whittle that down and just say things, it's not just that the will is manifested through actions. The will is just literally things. Things are literally just will. We start by saying things are the will because they will. They're willing. It's implying a sort of a theory of time. But if we're saying no, things are literally the will, like there is just, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing. Phenomena and noumena. That's it. If we're just going by that, we're not really viewing the will as a sort of action, then perhaps there's some room for it. But I think the will should be understood as a sort of, especially the idea of the perpetuation through time. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Is basically phenomena, noumena, substance, process. The process is its disposition to suffer, and really, if we're admitting substances in any sort of possible world, then all possible worlds are doomed to fail, I guess.